welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Arc podcast. Today, we're going to be taking some inspiration from another podcaster that I really enjoy watching. It's Kenny Beecham. He discussed the worst acquisitions and reversing the worst acquisitions an NBA team has ever made. I kind of wanted to do the exact opposite, discuss the best acquisitions some teams have made and what has created the foundation of their overall legacy as an NBA team. So if you do enjoy this video, do me a huge favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment down below your favorite NBA team and your favorite transaction they've ever made. So without further ado, let's get right on into this. So just a little context, there are going to be some acquisitions that, I may not have gone over as extensively as others just because, for instance, let's take the Charlotte Hornets. They haven't done a whole lot with their franchise quite yet. They haven't made a championship yet, etc. So I'm not going to be spending as much time on teams like that versus some of the other teams where there's actually multiple that could be considered a number one. I'm going to be discussing those in further detail. So let's just start off at the top, work our way down to the bottom. One thing I should mention is I am getting over being sick, so if I sound a little off or something like that, it's just because of that. But the show must go on. So starting off with the Atlanta Hawks, them trading for Dominique Wilkins has got to be their best acquisition. They're a team that Dominique Wilkins came in. He came in a deal that sent Freeman Williams, John Drew, and $1 million to Utah. And Dominique Wilkins actually forced his way over to basically not to Atlanta specifically, but out of Utah because he felt as if they didn't really align with what he wanted to do. Dominique Wilkins was not on the same wavelength as a team, so he forced a trade, kind of starting a line of forced trades that we'll see as we'll go down this list. But Dominique Wilkins came in. He was a 30 point per game scorer. And although he never brought Atlanta a championship, I think what he's done for that culture and for the Atlanta Hawks themselves definitely might have even saved their city. Who knows if Atlanta, if they didn't go out and get Wilkins, if they'd still be in Atlanta to this day. So I think you kind of owe a lot to Dominique Wilkins for creating the Atlanta Hawks into who they kind of are. Next up here, I have the Boston Celtics. Now, this is one of those ones that there's multiple that you could toss up between. So starting off, trading for Kevin Garnett was an opportunity that I looked at as a possibility. You traded him from Minnesota over to Boston. And I thought about that one, but I kind of want to go a different route because I feel like most people would put that one down because we haven't seen the full trajectory of them trading away Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. Of course, that led to them getting players like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who have brought a championship to Boston already, right? Their legacies are not done in Boston yet. Kevin Garnett's is. He brought one championship to the team, and that's fantastic and everything. But I think when all is said and done, the Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown acquisitions will be greater than what Kevin Garnett did for Boston. I understand the idea that, of course, he brought a championship. It was a huge championship, took down someone like Kobe Bryant along the way. But what I'll say is Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have won one. They're still intact together, so I believe that it is still carrying on with the possibility of adding another. Now, of course, if they don't, which championship means more? It would be that Garnett championship would mean more to Boston themselves than the one where Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown beat the Mavericks. So let's move on to the next one, which would be the Brooklyn Nets. Now, this is just the Nets in general. This isn't just Brooklyn. So New Jersey is included in this as well. And I think it's got to be Jason Kidd. There were thoughts on like Kevin Durant possibly being that guy and everything like that, being the best move for the Nets. But drafting Jason Kidd brought you to back-to-back NBA Finals appearances in 2002 and 2003. He was the focal leader. He was your point guard. He was your leader of the roster. I think that there's no other answer other than Jason Kidd here. I mean, I guess in theory you could have gone with somebody like Richard Jefferson or someone like that, but I think Jason Kidd, especially like the longevity of his career and how good he was for the Nets, only speaks more volume about how good, I guess, how bad the Nets have really done long term, because you didn't win a championship with your guys, similar to like the Atlanta Hawks didn't win a championship with Dominique Wilkins, but just what Jason Kidd did to the franchise, bringing them to 2 titles. Next up, the Hornets. This is a team that they haven't really done much. So I put drafting Kemba Walker. Now, at first, it was a little bit of a shocker when I was doing the research into this about the best possible acquisitions, because you typically will forget about someone when you're just thinking off the top of the dome. But the Hornets, realistically, they only do have their greatest acquisition being just their best scorer of all time, which is Kemba Walker. Somebody who outside of Charlotte couldn't really do much, but for the Hornets themselves is the leading scorer. They haven't done much in the playoffs, haven't been to a championship, etc. I can't put anything else up here, right? Like LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller haven't done anything for the Hornets compared to what Kemba Walker has. So I would say Kemba Walker is the best acquisition. But let me know in the comments whether, Glenn Rice was also an option, but I just think Kemba Walker's done more for the city, being an all-time leading scorer. The next one is the Chicago Bulls. I think this is an easy one. Drafting Michael Jordan. Gotta be your best move. I mean, 6 championships, 6-0 in the NBA Finals, arguably one of the, you could say one of 2 greatest players of all time right there. What he's done for basketball itself with the culture of shoes, with the culture of play style and swagger and etc. Jordan might have been the greatest acquisition of all time, from any team, from any organization, maybe even from any sport. Michael Jordan may have changed the game dramatically. So I think that one's a pretty easy one. I guess you could say in theory another one would be like Scottie Pippen and or Derrick Rose, but nothing comes close to Michael Jordan, right? I mean, Michael Jordan was able to, like, this was at a time when he came in the league, this was at a time when it was an all-time low attendance and viewership and everything. And then Jordan came in and he's doing these high-fly dunks and he's got this swagger to him that no one can stop. And other players are saying that he is their favorite player. Like, that was never even heard of before. Now you've got, Michael Jordan, who has dramatically evolved the game and helped out players today by being who he was when he played. Next up, the Cavs. Following the whole drafting Jordan, the Cavs drafting LeBron. I don't think there's another answer here. Similar, he led them to a championship he led them to a finals appearance when he was so young. Then realized he needed help. He left, and then he came back and he brought a championship to Cleveland. That's important here, is he came back and he at least got them, a championship. So LeBron has got to be, same thing with Jordan, arguably one of the greatest players of all time. He is somebody that will go down in history, leading all-time scorer now, of course, still doing it at 41. Like, it's crazy what he's able to do on the court, and then even off the court. Super smart businessman. He's helped his children further their basketball careers as well, with, of course, Bronny being in the league and his other son, Bryce, following pretty soon. Fantastic father, fantastic businessman, fantastic basketball player, all around just a great guy. So that one's an easy one. Other acquisitions you could say would be like trading for Kevin Love would help them then lead, help them with the championship. Drafting Kyrie Irving. You could even, Mark Price would be a possible option, but overall it's got to be LeBron. Next up on this list, I have the Dallas Mavericks. Some people are going to say drafting Luka, others, maybe Cooper Flagg, etc. But overall, the greatest acquisition that the Dallas Mavericks have ever made is trading for Dirk Nowitzki. Dirk Nowitzki led a team and went on the toughest championship run in NBA history. He went through teams like the Lakers with Kobe. He went through the Big Three Heat. He went through the Thunder, etc. Dirk Nowitzki has the title of the greatest title of all time, the greatest playoff run of all time. And it's from one of the greatest power forwards to ever play the game. So initially, the Milwaukee Bucks actually drafted Dirk Nowitzki. And then at the time when they drafted him, the Mavericks sent Robert Traylor to the Bucks in exchange for Pat Garrity and Dirk Nowitzki. Then Pat Garrity, a part of that deal, was used to then land Steve Nash from Phoenix. So that trade opened up a plethora of options for them, which then brought in this dynamic duo of Steve Nash and Dirk Nowitzki. So I would just say, like, this is, one, a very lopsided trade, and then two, you just got one of the greatest power forwards of all time. Now, of course, I know Kenny Beecham spoke about the opposite of this, being Luka being traded away. Obviously, that is probably the worst overall trade that you can do. In theory, another option I thought about was also trading with the Hawks for Luka Doncic on draft night, where he led you to a finals appearance, but Dirk got you over the hump. That's why I chose Dirk Nowitzki as the greatest Dallas Maverick acquisition of all time. So don't hate me in the comments for choosing Dirk over Luka. It's just, the fact right there. The Denver Nuggets, this is an easy one. It's drafting Nikola Jokic, second round during the Taco Bell commercial. Guy was taking a nap, whole 9 yards. He led you to a championship. That's as simple as that. Jokic has really molded what it means to be a fantastic center playmaker. A guy who feels like he can play this point center position that we don't really see a lot of. It's almost like this elevated Magic Johnson style of play, where he's a big man. He can pass, he can shoot, he can drive, he can, get teammates open. He almost sees the game happen before it actually happens, right? He just knows where his teammates are going to be, and he has this great trust among teammates where you have those guys that just genuinely, let's be honest, they're Aaron Gordon, which is not as talented as Jokic, but Jokic trusts him to have the ball in his hands at any time of period, right? It doesn't matter what point in the game it is, Jokic trusts anybody to have the ball in his hands. And it's phenomenal for a teammate to do that, to have that trust level among other teammates. So, yeah, and Jokic isn't done. That legacy is not over. Alex English would have been an honorable mention that possibly could have been chosen as well. I just think that Jokic, by the end of his career, might be projecting just a little bit, will be the greatest Nugget of all time. So the Detroit Pistons was an interesting one. They're one of those that, similar to like the New Jersey Nets, Brooklyn Nets era, where you had a plethora of options to choose from. But I went ahead and went with trading for Ben Wallace and Grant Hill as the possible greatest acquisition that the Pistons have ever made. Because adding a defensive player of the year like Ben Wallace ended up leading them to a championship in 2004. They're a team that, they were this similar to the Dallas Mavericks when Dirk and the Mavs went on their run. It was, one, tough, and two, it was an all-around team job. It was not just one guy who was putting the team on his back and carrying this roster. It was Chauncey Billups, it was Ben Wallace, it was etc. Richard Hamilton, and the whole roster working together to really put something together to be a winning organization here. And as their only championship, it's got to be the greatest acquisition. The Golden State Warriors, there's two here. This is one of those ones where you could say drafting Steph Curry, and there was actually a deal of trading away Steph Curry to, I believe it was Minnesota, I want to say, but I'm not too sure on that. But they declined the trade, Now, the Steph Curry is one of the greatest point guards of all time. He is the greatest shooter of all time. So he obviously has to be a mention here. He has led them to championship after championship, and even not a championship, a finals run after finals run. The other acquisition that means so much to this organization has to be when they traded for Kevin Durant. This is something that Kevin Durant was able to help that 73-9 team get over the hump and beat the Cavs. He has one of the greatest shots of all time. That pull-up three, dagger shot against the Cavs. Of course, he ruptured his Achilles against the Raptors, but who knows what they could have been had he stayed healthy. They probably could have won that championship. It felt like it, at least. Raptors had a chance, but the Warriors were like the Avengers. They just had every piece that you needed. Or I guess they were like Thanos' gauntlet. They had all the Infinity Stones. So, next up here, I have the Houston Rockets. Drafting Hakeem Olajuwon has to be the player. I thought about James Harden for a second, and maybe if James Harden's career in Houston would have lasted longer, I would have picked him, but it's got to be Hakeem. It's something that, one, led them to championships, two, they chose to draft him even though there was so much hype over somebody like Michael Jordan, right? And of course, Michael went 3 in that same draft, don't get me wrong, but you had coaches like Bob Knight who had said that Michael Jordan is the greatest player he has ever laid his eyes on, greatest athlete he has ever seen. It is tough to then draft a guy who, obviously he played in the hometown Houston and all that, but it's tough to draft a guy like, and Hakeem he had a great college career, don't get me wrong, and I'm not, this isn't like crapping on Kareem or anything, it's just, Michael Jordan ended up becoming Michael Jordan, but when you have these famous coaches saying that this player is going to be the next fantastic great, yet you still went away from drafting him, I don't blame you, because Hakeem, his legacy in college and all that was fantastic. But yeah, led you to championship. I mean, Hakeem Olajuwon got to be, he's got one of the most famous moves of all time, the Dream Shake. So I think it's got to be Hakeem Olajuwon over somebody like James Harden. James Harden couldn't quite get over the hump. So the Indiana Pacers, this one might shock a lot of people, but I'm going to say trading for Tyrese Halliburton is their greatest acquisition of all time. They made it to the championship. I mean, that's what you got to say. The legacy's not done. Yeah, he unfortunately, he tore up his leg. That's a bummer. He's going to miss all next season. Hopefully he can come back from it 110% and be better than ever. I am worried about that, but what I'll say is you made it to the promised land. And this team was, on paper, so much worse than the Thunder. They didn't match up fantastic against the Thunder. And I really commemorate Tyrese Halliburton for putting 120% effort into each and every game to lift this team up and help them get to where they needed to be. Again, this would have been, if they would have won the championship, it would have been one of those New Jersey Nets, Detroit Pistons, Dallas Mavericks, where it was an all-around team, not just one player, but kind of the focal point, like the New Jersey Nets, was that point guard play, or similar to like Tyrese Halliburton. So the Los Angeles Clippers are next up on the list. They're a team that they haven't succeeded much in the NBA, right? So there is no championship caliber player here, but I'll say trading for Chris Paul is probably the closest that they have been able to get. They had such a fun team to watch, right? Lob City was there. They traded for Chris Paul. I thought about maybe Kawhi, but I mean, nah, it can't be Kawhi. It's got to be Chris Paul, because Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, etc., that roster was fun to watch. They were exciting. You always wanted to root for them. And then they even did things like hold back players from leaving. There was a deal on the table for DeAndre Jordan to the Mavericks. and it fell through because they basically kidnapped the guy, held him in captivity to stay with the Clippers. So, Chris Paul, fantastic point guard, top 15 point guard of all time, if not top 10 point guard of all time. Fantastic player, and he was almost a Laker. That got vetoed. Then he became a Clipper. And a guy who, he's going to finish his career there, going to go down as one of the greatest Clippers of all time. Next up, the Lakers are here. This one, you could have probably picked 5 different options. There's 2 here. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to the Lakers is an obvious one. But I want to talk about Kobe Bryant to the Lakers. Because you traded for Kobe on draft night, a kid out of high school from the Charlotte Hornets. And I wish Kenny Beecham would have put this for the Hornets specifically. I don't remember exactly what he put for the Hornets, but he didn't say Kobe. And the entire video, that's what I was thinking. Worst acquisitions of all time, the Hornets trading away Kobe Bryant. Yeah, you don't know that Kobe is going to be Kobe on draft night, but draft night trades can kill an organization. Because look at the Hornets. Imagine if they had Kobe, a top 3 shooting guard of all time, right? Arguably one of the greatest players of all time. He is anywhere from 3 on people's list to 15 on people's list, but he's in that area. Kobe Bryant meant so much to the Lakers. Like, there's a statue of him. He was the definition of just pure workhorse, didn't care who he was going up against. He could be defended by 5 guys. He was going to be taking a shot. He was going to be scoring the ball. He was a fantastic two-way player. I think Kobe meant so much to the Lakers organization. He's got to be the guy, the greatest acquisition for the Lakers of all time. I mean, shoot, he literally went up against a monster Celtics team, lost to them, but also beat them. He went up, against a lot. He always had to compete in the West against the Steve Nash, the Amari Stoudemires. He had to compete against the Tony Parkers and Tim Duncans. Frank, he had Pau Gasol, but Pau Gasol is not Tim Duncan, or, he's not Steve Nash level. Pau Gasol is good, don't get me wrong. He's a fantastic player and fit perfectly alongside Kobe. But Kobe meant so much to that league and so much to the Lakers. He's got to be the greatest acquisition of all time. This next team is the Memphis Grizzlies. I had a lot of toss-up on this one. I thought about Zach Randolph here. I thought about a lot of different pieces. I went with Marc Gasol. And why I went with Marc Gasol is him going over, he was basically traded for his brother, Pau Gasol, right? But he started this era in Memphis that was the grit and grind era, where they then got out and they went out and got players like Zach Randolph. They went out and got players like Tony Allen. They went out and got Mike Conley, etc. And they built this roster that I'm surprised didn't go farther than they actually did. Right? It was a heavy defensive team, and they were in this era of they were competing for playoff runs, but they kept running into the Lakers, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Those rosters unfortunately just weren't strong enough. And they tried, a plethora of like the OJ Mayos, the Rudy Gays, like I said, Tony Allens, to try and throw anything but the kitchen sink at all other teams to try and come up with some sort of win. They didn't quite make it as far as you would have hoped if you were a Grizzlies fan, but Marc Gasol is probably the greatest Grizzly transaction of all time. The Miami Heat, I put just bringing in the big 3 together. I think that's a pretty easy one. I guess you could say Shaq is another, or drafting D Wade. But you had D Wade already on the roster. You brought in Chris Bosh and LeBron, and I think the decision is one of the most blockbuster moves we've ever seen, on par with like a Luka to the Lakers, where it's just going to be 20 years from now, we're still going to be talking about the decision, where like the guy literally sat down on camera and made his decision live in front of so many people. It is just crazy to think about the impact that that had on the game of basketball in the Big Three development era, where then, you know, they were dominating teams. And they also kind of, I guess in theory, started this revolution of we don't really need to worry about having this big man center, right? Although you were going up against the Kendrick Perkins, Kevin Garnett bigs in Boston, or the Dwight Howards in Orlando, or the Roy Hibbert of Indiana, you put Udonis Haslem or Joel Anthony, who are undersized, and honestly, undersized and not to the level of the Chris Bosh and the D Wade and the LeBron, right? Where you invested so much money into your big three that you had all these vets on vet minimums, and you know the roster was deep, but it was not, there was no like future, I guess in theory you could look at it like that, like not in a bad way by any means, because they won championships, so it's like the future out the window if you win championships now, right? And that just did something, and it's something that we can't really do in today's league. Teams try and do it. The Brooklyn Nets experiment failed. Yes, there were a lot of injuries and all that with Kyrie, KD, and James Harden, but it never worked. Like the Lakers try it with AD, LeBron, Russell Westbrook, or right now they're trying this like LeBron, Luka, Austin Reeves mold, but it's not really a big three. We've seen the big three and Shaq, Kobe, Dwight, and Steve Nash didn't work, right? Because you invest so much money into the three, and then especially today with the second apron, it's so tough to invest so much money and then get screwed later because you did. It's almost inevitable that you're not going to be able to do something like that, that you're going to have to focus on depth, because you have to have your future intact, like the Oklahoma City Thunder. They have plenty of draft capital, plenty of young pieces, and then they, before their players get too expensive, they make the trades and etc. And then in the future, they'll focus on who they need to trade away and who they need to cut, whole 9 yards. So yeah, Miami really did something that shook up the NBA. The next on the list is the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks, it's got to be drafting Giannis. I mean, he put that team on his back, carried them to a championship. He's going to go down as the greatest Buck in history. And I know, of course, there's Kareem there, there's Oscar Robertson, but I think it'll be Giannis once all is said and done. This is a player who cannot be guarded. A player who, full head of steam, he's getting to the basket no matter what, in like 3 steps. Giannis is the Greek freak for a reason. He is a phenomenal basketball player who just uses his athletic ability to dominate the basketball game. Because, like, let's be honest, if he was 6'6", he wouldn't be nowhere near as good as he is. He would still be a good NBA player, probably, but you might look at him more of like a, honestly, he might, if he was smaller, he might be more like Russell Westbrook. Just a full head of steam player, freak athlete. But Giannis, of course, is this 7-footer he can handle the ball. He is developing a 3-point shot. He's working on the free throws, but he's a dominant player. He fits in the category of a Shaq, of a Sean Kemp, of a I'm trying to think of other players, of a Charles Barkley, where they're just like anomalies, where they are so dominant and you just can't do anything to stop them, right? Those players, yes, they aren't always going to get over the hump and get to the championship because they need assistance, but They're just so dominant at what they do, and they stick to what they do. Because it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Try and stop me. If I'm 6'11" and it takes me 3 steps to get from one sideline or from one inbound to the other, why would I not use that to my advantage? Why would I shoot a 3 when I can drive all the way to the basket, and you're going to have to foul me 12 times in order for me to not shoot this ball? You're going to have to foul me and force me to make my free throws in order for me to actually, to try and stop me somehow. So the Milwaukee Bucks, it's got to be drafting Giannis. This next one might shock some people. It is the Minnesota Timberwolves. And, there's the idea of Kevin Garnett, right? There's Kevin Love. But I'm going to go with a new face. Anthony Edwards is the greatest pickup for the Timberwolves. Drafting Anthony Edwards, a guy who coming into the league came in right around COVID. Came in, we didn't really know much on him. We knew he was a good scorer. We knew he was a phenomenal. He could get to the basket like no other. But there were so many question marks around him because there was no college tournament. There was not a lot. The season got shut down. You didn't have a lot of information, and you had big whiffs that season. The pick after you was James Wiseman. Huge miss by the Warriors, right? You had Patrick Williams drafted. Huge miss by the Bulls. You had Obi Toppin drafted. Huge miss by the Knicks, right? You had all these players, and then you were picking at 1. You draft Anthony Edwards. He brings you, yes, he hasn't brought you to the championship yet, but he's brought you deep into the playoffs, something that Minnesota is not used to seeing, and he's done it multiple seasons. He single-handedly took down Kevin Durant and the Suns, and not only took them down, but swept them. And while he's doing it, he's talking smack the entire time. I mean, Anthony Edwards has this swagger like Michael Jordan. And he's somebody that, like, yes, he's not always going to have these phenomenal games and all that, just as every player has down games, and he's going to need assistance, but that's just the league that we play in, where teams aren't going to be able to just rely on one single player. You're going to need help. But Anthony Edwards has done more for the Timberwolves, and he's only freaking 23 than, to be frank, than KG did for the Timberwolves in his entire tenure. So, and that's no disrespect to Kevin Garnett. It's more of just a compliment to what Anthony Edwards has already accomplished. I mean, this guy is like talking smack to the former president, Barack Obama. Insane to have that kind of swagger and confidence. He doesn't care who's in front of him. He's going to be talking smack. He's going to let you hear it, and he's going to do what he can do to beat you. I have all respect for Anthony Edwards, and I'm excited to see what his career can pan out to be. Already a phenomenal scorer. The New Orleans Pelicans are here. They haven't really done much as a New Orleans Pelican. You can say Anthony Davis, and it was a toss-up between Anthony Davis and, when they were the Hornets, Chris Paul. I went with drafting Chris Paul, one of the greatest Hornets of all time. Just a phenomenal point guard, dominant point guard and he's only a 6-footer. He's a small guard that actually was able to posterize Dwight Howard, or, he was just phenomenal to where he was so good at what he did that the NBA had to step in and veto a trade to not allow him to go join up with Kobe. Insane to think about. We've never seen that before. But that's what happened. Is the Hornets drafting Chris Paul is the greatest move. The New York Knicks. I went ahead and went with Patrick Ewing. A lot of people, they believe that whole debacle was rigged on the Knicks getting Patrick Ewing. They never won a championship from that. But what I will say is the Knicks helped revive the viewership of the NBA. They were a team that the NBA views were down. They needed something exciting to shake up. Why not, draft one of the most exciting players coming out of college and put him in a huge market in New York? Even if that draft was rigged, let's say theoretically, it was probably for the better, because it's better for him to go somewhere like New York than somewhere like Indiana. That's a small market team, because it's just, we didn't have social media back then like we do now. So we needed him to be in a big market, big population, because he was an exciting player coming out of college. We needed him for the NBA to kind of survive, because who knows what the NBA would have looked like had he not gone in the Knicks. Had the average fan not been getting excited to watch New York basketball. Next up on this list, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's got to be them trading Paul George for Shea and all those draft picks, because it led them to a championship this year. It led them to one of the best NBA players in the league right now in Shea. He's just somebody that his legacy is just starting. His prime is just starting, and he's already dominating. He's learning the game, ins and outs of everything, and he's looking like he can't be stopped. Yes, he is somebody that has figured out the rule book for sure, and I'm not discrediting him for that, but he definitely plays into the rules. But I'll say that just stop him. Don't foul him if it's that big of a deal, right? You still have to guard him, but just don't commit the fouls. I understand there might be a little bit of like flop action, but if it were you or I or any other player doing it, all of us would take advantage of that. If the ref is going to give us the call, we're going to take the call. Because rather than doing some step back three with a hand in your face, it's a lot easier to just make 2 free throws when you get fouled at the, drive into the paint. But it's a lot like when Kobe spoke about learning where the referees were supposed to stand, and he would know when he's allowed to like pinch a player, for example, or tug on a jersey a little bit extra because the ref's not going to see it. That's what this reminds me of with Shea, is he's just learning to manipulate the rules in his favor. So you can't fault him for that. Change the rules if you have a problem with it. The next team I'd like to talk about is the Orlando Magic. We only got about 8 more teams or so. Orlando's greatest acquisition of all time has to be Dwight Howard. I mean, Dwight Howard led them, put the team on his back, something that he had this 20 and 20 kind of night on any given night. He was a dominant center. A guy who couldn't shoot free throws, couldn't shoot threes. He only could do a handful of things, but he was very dominant at those things. Similar to a Shaq, similar to a Giannis, similar to, like I said, Charles Barkley, where very good at what he did, and you just had to stop him. And if he played sooner than he was drafted, his career probably would have lasted a lot longer than it did. Him in Orlando was the synopsis of his career, the greatest stint of his career, and he led them to a championship, or to a finals appearance. They didn't win it, but he led them to an appearance, and that says a lot. And yeah, he had help around him, the Jameer Nelson, the J.J. Redick, the Rashard Lewis, Michael Pietrus, etc., but Dwight Howard was the focal point. He was the reason they made it that far. Next up, I have the Philadelphia 76ers, them drafting or trading for Julius Erving, bringing multiple championships. I mean, he's one of the smoothest players you'll ever watch. Just a very smooth, really kind of evolved the layup. Let's be like these underneath the basket wraparounds and all that. We just really hadn't seen that before. So a lot of credit to Dr. J for players of like Kyrie Irving, for example. I'm sure took a ton of inspiration from someone like Dr. J in what he was able to accomplish, because Kyrie Irving's probably the greatest layup package of all time. And a lot of like the underneath the basket, I'm sure he got from somebody like a Dr. J. Phoenix here, it could be Steve Nash that you could say for the Phoenix Suns. I'm going to go with Devin Booker. Devin Booker is leading scorer for the Phoenix Suns all time, going to go down as the greatest Phoenix Sun player of all time, and just a guy who has done everything he can for this city. He has scored 70 points in a game. He has put a team on his back, carried them to a finals. He has done it all. And he hasn't left. He's been through the tough times. He's been through the great times. He has stuck around. So you could say Steve Nash for his stint in Phoenix, but I think because of what Devin Booker's been through and stuck through the bad and the good, he is the greatest Phoenix Sun of all time. And even what he's doing outside of the game and building parks or designing courts, etc., for the average fan, he's the greatest Phoenix Sun. Because it's not all about winning or about what you do on the court. And although he's won it, he's been to the promised land. He hasn't won it. Been to the promised land. He's won games for them. He's dropped a fat amount of points, etc. He is somebody that will go down as the greatest Phoenix Sun of all time. The Portland Trailblazers, I think it's got to be drafting Damian Lillard. This Weber State kid, you draft him. He's got one of the most infamous buzzer beaters of all time in the step back, 3-point shot way beyond the 3-point line, right by the logo, waving goodbye to Paul George. Or he's got the buzzer beater against the Houston Rockets with like 0.9 seconds left on the clock when he wraps around, hits that top of the key three to win the series. Just shots like that. The greatest Trailblazer of all time. I mean, he thought the grass might be greener on the other side. He left to Milwaukee and he came right back. That's how good he had it with Portland. And I like to see that. So it could have been somebody like drafting Clyde Drexler, could have been drafting LaMarcus Aldridge or trading for LaMarcus Aldridge, but it's got to be Damian Lillard. Biggest whiff of all time, probably Greg Oden, but drafting Damian Lillard definitely makes up for something like that. Next up on this list, we have the Sacramento Kings, them acquiring Chris Webber, something that he was sent to Sacramento in exchange for Mitch Richmond and Otis Thorpe, somebody that he helped bring them as far as they've ever been, Western Conference Finals. This is the Sacramento King era, not the Rochester Royal era. Talking about the Sacramento Kings specifically. It was just something where he had to go through the Lakers. He had to, or attempt to go through the Lakers, didn't actually get over the Lakers. But yeah, he made it to the Western Conference Finals handful of times, being your star player, averaging 23, 10, and 4. Also a steal game, a block and a half a game. I mean, 5 All-NBA teams as well. Just not too much has happened in Sacramento. I'm not going to give it to De'Aaron Fox. Not going to give it to Sabonis. It's got to be Chris Webber. The San Antonio Spurs, it's got to be drafting Tim Duncan. Brought him to multiple championships. Took down teams, tough teams like Kobe and the Lakers to make championship runs. Stopped fantastic teams from winning it all. They're just all around. San Antonio Spurs are the definition of fundamentals. And Tim Duncan is the greatest fundamental player of all time. I mean, what else can you say about Tim Duncan other than great things? Went to Wake Forest, got a degree, went to the NBA, drafted to the Spurs, and just stayed a Spur. Stayed a lifer, greatest San Antonio Spur of all time. You could say somebody like David Robinson, Kawhi Leonard, Tony Parker, but it's got to be Tim Duncan. I don't think there's anyone else. Speaking of Kawhi Leonard, the Toronto Raptors' greatest acquisition is getting Kawhi Leonard. I mean, it might be one of the greatest single season runs we've ever seen from a guy who is stuck on a team for one season. I can't really think of anything else off the top of my head that would top what Kawhi Leonard did for one season in Toronto. He put this team on his back. And yeah, some injuries assisted the way with Kevin Durant obviously getting injured, but overall, a championship is a championship no matter which way you look at it. I don't care if it's the Bubble Lakers. I don't care if it's Toronto Raptors championship run. I don't care if it's the Celtics run from a few seasons ago. It is still a championship regardless of how you look at it. So, because you still need to beat so many teams to get to where you need to be. So, Kawhi Leonard's run, I mean, he had, in my opinion, the greatest buzzer beater of all time. That shot that just rim rattled, double teamed, hit the shot in the corner, just insane. And then to continue that with a championship, it was like, that was the greatest stint I've ever seen. The Utah Jazz. I mean, you got Karl Malone. I'm not going to say too much. Not the biggest fan of Karl Malone myself, but he's one of the greatest power forwards of all time, phenomenal scorer, etc. Last but not least, the Utah Jazz. This was a toss-up between Wes Unseld and Elvin Hayes. I went with Wes Unseld because, I mean, he was a guy that Finals MVP, helped bring them to a championship. Overall, the Wizards haven't done much except for their early days back in the 70s. But nowadays, it probably would have been somebody like John Wall or Bradley Beal. But I wanted to give love to some of the older players, especially since some of these other ones, like the Kings, for example, I didn't talk about the Rochester Royals. I only talked about the Sacramento Kings. So I wanted to give love in some organizations to some of those older players, especially some of those ones that just didn't have a lot of success nowadays. So, all right, guys, if you did enjoy this video, do me a huge favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Again, shout out to Kenny Beecham for the idea. He did the exact opposite. It was actually an extremely interesting video. So if you didn't go watch that, please go check out his channel, all of his channels, but I believe it was on Kenny2. That's TOO. So go check out his channel for that video. So without further ado, it's been another Beyond the Arc episode, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.